from the CyberHub bunker and studio. You're listening to the CISOTalk podcast. No sales, no bullshit, just straight talk. Straight talk. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Friday feed here on CISOTalk, AMA style. I've got an awesome topic today. We're going to be talking about digital citizenship, teaching our kids how to be digital citizens. I've got an awesome couple joining me. You guys see them on screen. Hans and Angie Vargas are going to be joining us here in just a moment to talk a lot about this very topic, and they're experts on it. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. But before we do, go and subscribe to the CISOTalk podcast. Go and subscribe to the CyberHub podcast. Go follow us on your favorite social media platforms and be part of the community. Yesterday, I dropped one of my favorite CISOTalk podcasts I've recorded in a very long time, The Leaders of Cardinal Health over in Columbus, Ohio. The magnificent ladies there, Lori, Jana, Samara, and Brittany. Go check it out. Episode's been unbelievable. You guys are going to absolutely love it. CISOTalk podcast or on our YouTube channel at CyberHub Podcast. You can go catch that episode. We'll say good morning to Matt Harshil. Harshil, I said that right, Mr. Shaw? I hope so. Happy Friday to you as well. Good morning to Argny. How's it going, brother? Justin says he's been looking forward to this one. And David Bren says, this is awesome. The parents of my students at Code Ninja's programming course are always asking questions like this. So the community is eager for it. Hans, Angie, good morning. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How you guys doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
So I will introduce you to our awesome group that's joining us today, folks. So if you guys don't know Hans is originally from Peru. Yes, he is.
Yes.
And he immigrated to the U.S., got a bachelor's degrees in system engineering, master's in information security from Purdue, the awesome Purdue University. If anyone's from Notre Dame now, you're going to get a bunch of thumbs down, but they'll get over it. And he's currently a cybersecurity practitioner in the energy sector. And Hans, thank you for coming on the show. And then the better part of this relationship, right? So Hans is nice, but, you know, every great man has a greater woman behind him, is Angie, who's dedicated the last 15 years of her life in classroom, teaching kids ranging from the ages of K to 8, teaching middle school. Hans and Angie have developed and implemented a digital citizenship curriculum. This curriculum was taught to 7th and 8th graders for 2 years. So, Angie, welcome. And thank you for taking time out of your Friday to be with us and share this information. I really appreciate it.
We're excited to be here.
Well, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what digital citizenship is all about. I mean, what's the concept behind it? How was it born? How did you two come to, one, meet, and then number two, do this together?
Okay, so we met. I went to Peru when I was still in college, and I did some teaching of English at a school down there, and I actually ended up living with his parents. And I know, right? Nothing like meeting your in-laws before you know they're your in-laws. And he came home from college 1 week while I was there. It was his vacation, and we met. Mm-hmm. And that was really kind of, I mean, the sparks were there, but we didn't even know if we would ever see each other again. But I continued coming back to Peru, and eventually thank goodness. We got married, and he came here, and it'll be 15 years in September. So.
Well, congratulations. I love good stories of how people meet. It's unbelievable. So talk a little bit about digital citizenship. How'd you guys come up with this?
Well, different careers, right? A teacher and an IT guy, and they were not mixing at all. So we were thinking, as she was the teacher and I'm working and start having kids, and we start seeing some of the need. You know, the kids are being given phones too early, or giving a phone and not giving any guidance about how to protect themselves on the things that if you used to hear this before, don't put a computer with internet on the kid's bathroom. Right. At least not guidance. And then here we are giving kids phones fully connected to the internet with data, and some of the dangers that they can put themselves into. So we thought, and actually your principal at the time was very supportive of it.
He was wanting to start a new class. This was kind of a brainchild of his, and he had worked in technology and things like that and had seen the need as well. And so he came to me. He actually took me from my 5th grade job at a different building and said, hey, I have this position. It's really what you want to do with it. There's no curriculum, but here's kind of what we want to see. And we were able to collaborate and build it into something that I was able to teach to 7th and 8th graders until, finally we had to move on to something different.
And I was super excited because I was able to work with her. I was just giving her resources. What about this? What about that? Anyway.
So Brian Kane thinks your story is absolutely great. Chris says teaching the next generation is critical. Matt agrees with Chris on that one. So thank you everyone for doing that. So let's talk a little bit about where the pitfalls are for our kids. So I want to tell you something. I want to share a personal story if I could.
Yep.
Just take a minute. When I started my podcast, my first year was right when the Girl Scouts announced they were going to do a cyber badge. Just so happened that my wife's best friend had a daughter who was in one of the troops that were supposed to get the cyber badge. So I had her on the show. And the episode's available for people to still go back and watch. And we talked a little bit about she was at the time she was 9. Today she's a young woman. She's 14 or 12 or 13. I forgot. She was 9 or 10 at the time. But we talked a little bit about social media. But at that age where she was, it wasn't social media as much as it was games like Roblox or Fortnite. And unfortunately, the predators they don't hang around Facebook. They hang around those places, right? How have you seen that develop, Angie, in the curriculum and talking to kids and teaching them?
Well, just so you know, Facebook is for old people now. It's when you talk to the teens, they're only on there for grandma. Like, that's really what they told me. I think we keep our Facebook for grandma and because we know eventually somebody's going to look at it. But they are definitely within the gamings. That was something that we had to address. And not just don't talk to strangers because, when you're playing online games, like you said, everybody's a stranger. And so it was really more of you need to be aware of what you're telling them. If you're talking to them, where are you playing? Are your parents allowed to see you? Are you playing in your room by yourself? And what do you do if you get approached by it? Because you will. What do you do? And how do you recognize the signs of somebody who is approaching you for something more than just let's play a game?
Yeah. And that's, I think, a big danger. Social media is obviously a big one. By the way, Christopher, who's a grown man, says, I also just stay on Facebook for grandma.
Yep.
Justin did not know that the Girl Scouts added a cyber patch. Yes, they did. It's sponsored by Palo Alto. It was Palo Alto's idea with the Girl Scouts of America, and it's a patch that they can earn. They do cyber projects, but it's more workforce development than it is cyber awareness.
Right.
So there's a difference, and I think people don't differentiate.
No.
Right? And Hans, that's very common, at least in our industry as a practitioner, right? People don't differentiate the difference between workforce development and awareness. And some people think that, I had a delegation here from the Czech Republic in Georgia a few years ago, pre-COVID, like right before COVID kicked off, a few months before that. And they were touring Georgia. And then I did a roundtable with them and a few local companies. And it was predominantly cybersecurity vendors and practitioners. And I asked in the room, how many of those vendors went through cyber awareness training? And only 20% raised their hand.
And the quality of that cyber awareness training, it's questionable sometimes too.
Indeed. Let's talk a little bit about social media, Angie. So what are we seeing from social media, and what are some of the things that parents are overlooking when it comes to social media that's allowing our kids to be victimized so frequently and exposed to so much awful stuff.
So I think a lot of it is a lot of parents are hands off. They are not aware of even some of the apps that kids are using, or especially if you talk to my students that I had, they had Instagram and their parents had Instagram, but they also had a Finsta, which is their fake Instagram, which their parents did not have. And, many of them had multiple accounts that they could hide quickly, that their parents weren't aware of. So if their parents were checking, they were easily able to, slide open oh, well, look, mom, here's my good one, and not see all the posts on the other one. And I think the other thing is the direct messaging. Many of my students had said that they have received nude videos, nude pictures, people asking them for nudes, people they didn't know, just getting messages. Or even, people, if they don't keep it private, which many of them don't because they want to be influencers. Yeah. That's a danger for me, I think, right now, too, is so many people think that they're going to be the next great influencer. So therefore, they are putting everything they have into their social media profile. And that's giving so much fire to people who are looking for either information or who are looking to prey on them. Here I am in a bikini on my beach vacation, and now I've got 50-year-old men commenting on my picture because they don't see that as a danger.
And the concept of security, privacy as well, which is, in this era, it's kind of your own open book. You're sharing from you wake up to, what you're eating to where you're walking, live streaming a lot of your life.
Yeah, there's a funny episode of Parks and Rec where Ron Swanson tries to go off the grid. And in the process of trying to go off the grid, he's talking to one of the guys there, and he goes, where did one of the other actors on the show go? And he went, oh, she went to Starbucks and she should be coming back. She's live streaming her walk back to the office. And he goes, and she's about to be here in 3, 2, 1, and in she walks, right? And I am Ron Swanson. I would love nothing more than to be off the grid. Unfortunately, I can't. I have a podcast. I'm on the grid all the darn time, right? But I try to limit as much information that I put out there from a personal level. But it's very, very challenging for kids because kids, you're right, Hans, don't know what privacy is. But the effects of social media have greater dangers, right? I mean, we've seen the last year and a half of COVID, suicide among teens was the highest it's ever been in our history.
It is.
And social media was a key contributor to that, was it not?
It was. And if you look into it, it has a lot to do with the pressures to be perfect, the pressures to have just the right post that's going to draw in enough likes.
Yes.
Likes are kind of
addicting.
They're addicting, and it's kind of like crack to our teenagers. They are wanting more, and they get a taste of it, and then they post more. And if their post isn't enough, they may post more risque. They may post, or if they don't get it, they end up in a depression, and it's affecting eating disorders. All things that can come from this are stressing our kids out and causing damage that we never intended it to have.
We also didn't necessarily advocate for, go off the grid. But if you're going to use these social media apps, or, you're going to put some presence online, be aware of the dangers of, what you said today might affect your job application 5 years down the road. Everything is kept. Photos, all those messages, posting publicly could come and hunt you. It could be the difference between choosing you, another person, or a scholarship, or even just a job application. A lot of employers are using, open source intelligence now to make a decision on who you are.
That's a wonderful point. We see that with cancel culture, right? Where something that someone did 15 years ago is now coming to light, and now it's offensive. 15 years ago, it was funny. And they're getting canceled for it. And so that's very true. David here has a very good question. So this generation of kids will be the first to have a data presence before they can control it. How do we help them balance safety against taking control of their online presence?
I think a lot of this comes from, you begin with parents.
Yeah.
As you know, I've done surveys of students that I've had recently. The average age for a kid getting a phone right now is 9. You know, we have to have a license to drive a car at 16, and you have to take testing. We are giving a damaging device to a 9-year-old without any sort of guidance, lessons to learn. You know, it's given to them, and we need to first start with parents and get them educated, but we also need to move and educate the students and the kids themselves. You know, you have the opportunity to build a profile or a presence that you want. Make it good, make it your own, use it because like Hans said, we're not necessarily advocates of stay totally away from it, because I think that's not going to happen. Realistically, are we going to keep people from social media? Probably not in this era we're at now. So now we educate them on how to appropriately put out the things that they can, how to keep their information that they want to themselves. Still private. What is private? What is information that you want to share? And in our class, I would make fake Facebook pages, not on it because I didn't want to use the actual thing, but we would make it and I would put it up and we would examine the page and say, okay, what can I find out about this person? And it didn't take very long before I could see their school uniform, so I know what school they're at. You know, you may never post the name of your city, but you've got a uniform, you've got a picture, you've got, you know, I just went to the beach 20 minutes from my house, and you've linked it to, you know, you've checked in.
To your location.
Yeah, all of these things. And so it's an education process that needs to be put out there.
Yeah, the dangers of social media. It's very interesting. I mentor a group called the Israeli American Council here in Georgia, and I work with a group of kids that are middle school to high school age. And half of the kids aren't on social media in our group. They don't like social media. They don't want to be part of social media. They're not on it.
An anti-movement. Interesting.
An anti-movement within some of the kids. And it's not the only place I've seen it. I've seen it across other spots, but you know, because they're not on social media, you don't know they exist. Right? It's very fascinating, but there I think there are some parents who do a good job at this, but you're right. You can't keep people long off of social media because that's a way to communicate. And, you know, if you look at the pandemic moved everything digital.
Yes, it did.
Right. And it had adverse effects on a lot of kids, but it also brought up the amount of pedophiles and predators out there targeting those kids. And let's talk a little bit about that, from, you know, sexting and nudes to, you know, shaming and sharing, to some of the stuff that goes on in those teenage years that really does impact it. And it's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of parents. It's very hard for a lot of parents to go sit with their teenage, you know, kids, boys or girls, and say, let's talk a little bit about, you know, your hormones and sending pictures and posting pictures of you in a bikini or anything else you might think of. It's a very hard conversations for a lot of parents to have. And, you know, we don't get a book when we become parents, right? Yeah. We're almost left to figure it out on our own, which is, you know, a whole other challenge altogether.
But what is worse, sometimes leave it up to others to, you know, pressuring educators. But why don't you share about the conversation you had with the boys and girls during the time you addressed that? So, you know,
for me, it wasn't as uncomfortable, I guess, because I'm used to dealing with the middle school age, and you know, we kind of joke about their hormones anyways. But when I would talk with parents, I would so much rather have that uncomfortable beginning conversation than to have the more awkward conversation of the principal calling you in because he has seen your daughter's nude body because it was sent to another student who has now brought it to this, and now there's disciplinary actions taking place. So, you know, when I would talk to the students, it was a lot of, they already know it's happening. And if they didn't know it was happening, they've heard of somebody doing it. So just the lack of control you have once you have sent that picture. A lot of times we would talk and they'd be like, oh, but Johnny loves me. He would never. Johnny's 13. Johnny's 16. Johnny doesn't have a full range of what he should be doing. And so more often than not, or Johnny and you break up. And then that picture has now been sent to Johnny's friends,
The football team.
the football team. It's now making its way to, and eventually it's going to be too many people that you never wanted to see. And then there's backlash on, and it's not just girls. It is not just girls. It is also the boys. They are sending all sorts of pics, and it's almost kind of like an introduction now. Like, here's my pic. You want to hang out?
It's normalizing that idea. And it's almost because everybody's doing it, it's still not okay. But, it's out there already. So that's almost like embracing it. And you also mentioned something about law. What is the implications of a teenager having that information, keeping it or sharing with others?
Right. And that's, I think, the thing, we know they're not looking. They're not thinking about this. They're not thinking what's the consequence. They're just thinking right here, right now, Johnny's going to like me more if I do this. The consequences that they don't understand is what they really are doing is taking child pornography, even if it is of yourself. And once you spread it, that is now you are distributing child pornography. And if you have it, and then it's spread even farther, that could eventually end up in cases with the police. You could end up having to register as a sex offender for one innocent thing that you thought you were doing that wasn't going to be a problem.
It can destroy the rest of someone's life
before
it even begins. We've got some great comments here, and I want to bring some of them up. Nora says, hey, James, Hans, and Angie, thanks for educating the youth. Thanks for your time. Happy to be here. Happy you're with us, Nora. David says it begins in the home. Most parents are unaware of the dangers of social media and how to monitor them. Chris shares a book. The Digital Tale was a great book for kids. And he has the Amazon link to go look at that as well. David says, by the time most parents speak to their children, they've already been misinformed by their friends or taught differently by those outside the home. And I think, that hits on the point you were making, Angie, which I thought was very, very valid. I'd rather have the awkward conversation before anything comes through than the the even more awkward consequential conversation thereafter, because once something is online, it's never coming back. You've got no way to take it down. We've seen that.
Many examples of that.
Yeah, there's a very I think that's one of the bigger challenges for a lot of kids is they don't understand the fact that once you send it, you have no control over it. And the apps like Snapchat who make you believe that you've got some sense of control. You have no control whatsoever.
No.
We've also got one more comment here from Nora. This reminds me of my friend's daughter who has been bullied by friends on Instagram, and this girl's out of high school because she is hurt and doesn't want to see her friends, and she's now staying home. Her mom is disturbed, didn't know how to handle it, not know how to stop it or who to reach out to. And cyberbullying is right there next on my talking point. So let's talk a little bit about that. Great timing, Nora.
Let me chime in saying one of the great things that I see she put into her as part of the conversation in her class was part of this digital citizenship. You're part of this world in the digital arena. So if you were to compare that to, we're talking face to face today, would I say mean things about you behind your face, behind your back? Probably. But if you're confronted to have this conversation face to face, you probably wouldn't say those mean things to somebody. So maybe you can share more about that.
I mean, some people would, there are some people who are just going to straight up say what they want. But a lot of it was, and we even did test things, what would you say to this person? And there have been many experiences where this person's, dressed differently or whatever, and kids make comments about it behind their back. But then if you bring that person to the front and they say, hey, what do you think of my outfit? Oh, yeah, you're looking good. Like, the compassion part of being behind the screen it is lost. And we see it. We see it every day. You see people comment, and it doesn't matter. Nobody takes a minute to think about anybody else's point. They just blast them, okay, boomer, or what, that was a big one I saw a lot lately is, just not even considering anything else. And so if you cannot see the hurt that you are causing a physical person, you are so much more likely to just send it out there. And that screen is really causing a problem for that. We had to spend a lot of time discussing what it really is. You don't have to not liking somebody's comment or picture is not bullying, because some people kind of felt like that was being bullied. But there are many different cases, and what to do when you see it. Do you retaliate? Because a lot of kids will retaliate back. How do you go about finding somebody you trust to share with? And then what the actual laws are. Kids are not aware that they can be held accountable. And this has just come up recently in legal things where there are girls who have been held accountable for another girl who committed suicide because their comments and their things that they said to her online and through text messages spurred it on. And students are not aware of that. They are not aware of the fact that these laws exist.
So that's a very interesting point. Students are unaware of some of these laws, but at the same time, that kind of falls into the idea that bullying was there a little bit before cyber came through, right before the digital world. I think the three of us are in about the same age group, so we all remember bullying on the school playground or on the school bus home or on the walk home from school. I was bullied extensively as a kid. I think there's part of that's bullying is something that kids do, but there's a big difference. And what do you think that big difference is between the bullying we went through, where not a lot of people committed suicide from being bullied on the school bus home? You hated it. You tried to have a fever and your stomach hurt more days than others, not dismissing it, right? So just want to be clear with my comment here to those watching and listening. I'm not saying that being bullied on a school bus isn't the same as being bullied online, but being bullied online is leading to greater consequences. Why do you think that difference is there?
Part of it is the lack of escape.
Yeah.
On the cyber world, there is no escape from it. Like you said, if you were on the bus or if you were at school, you could switch schools. You could maybe not go there. You could not hang out at the playground if you knew the bullies were going to be at the playground. You could kind of hang out somewhere differently. With the cyber world, there is no escape, and it's constant. You can block, but there's only so many, they can find another way to get to you. So if it's on Facebook and it begins and you block it, then it moves on to, now they're sending you emails, and then now they're sending you text messages over and over. It also happens with people posting pictures and photos and making comments, and then everybody else joining in. It's a much easier way to give a lot of people access to do it together because it's more accessible, and it's so much harder for them to escape.
The multiplier effect, it's also overwhelming for some kids. And it could go viral.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the stuff that goes viral, and unfortunately, that stuff is very, very. I don't want to say not only very disturbing; it's very troublesome. But cyberbullying has a significant effect on kids. But then that kind of takes it to social media platforms that allow it, right? Social media platforms brag of all the data they collect and all the stuff that they see and they can stop. Why is it that, nudity and cyberbullying are things that social media platforms consequently can't seem to stop?
That's a great question. We don't have an answer. I don't know. If you report it, it's a lot of people report it. I don't know They maybe don't have enough people or the processes to take care of that. But I would like to think that they do.
I would also think that you might need to see where maybe some of their funding is coming from. If you've looked at things, I know that there's been big platforms out lately, especially on Instagram and other places to get some of the pornography sites taken down. or less of the child pornography being out, but they had been funded. Other places have been funded through, and they would never say that, but we also don't know what's happening all behind the scenes.
So I want to point out to a law that just passed in Australia, and literally passed yesterday. And the law is called Legislation to Reduce Cyber Abuse by allowing it to force social media platforms like Facebook and Google to remove harmful materials within 24 hours or be fined as much as $415 or 558,000 Singaporean dollars. It's called the Online Safety Bill. Will also require internet service companies to provide identity and contract information about abusers on their platforms. This was developed in response to the horrible live stream terror attack in New Zealand in 2019, where a wackadoodle racist white supremacist walked into a mosque and shot dead over 50 people and live streamed it on Facebook. And the live stream went on for 30 minutes and no one bothered taking it down.
Mm-hmm.
The bill will require more companies to keep an updated online content scheme to do more to keep users safe online. It gives the e-safety commissioner powers to require app stores to remove products enabling the provision of harmful content. It also allows the regulator to take down websites if they don't comply.
Interesting.
So the Australian regulator can say, you're not taking down this content, we're going to block your IP in our country. So no one can access your website. Facebook is supporting it, but are concerned about the regulatory overreach. Twitter raised concerns about creating an enormous burden for smaller players. Twitter suck on screw Twitter. And then Alphabet Google has urged the government to narrow the scope of the measure. So
did you
social
see
media platforms are happy about it.
Did you see TikTok being fined by the Dutch government about the abuse and collecting data from children?
Yeah,
we are starting to see more, because these companies could self-regulate. It actually would be beneficial, like saying we care and value children's privacy or adults' privacy, but it's not in their business model. It's not necessarily something that they see a need for. But
no, if you look at Facebook's earnings, most of their earnings come from marketing to 13 to 22-year-olds.
Yes.
That's who buys off of Facebook. You and I, Hans, and I think Angie would be the same. We go to Amazon. We don't care what we see stuff on Facebook and we go, what's this company? And you start to wonder, and we're in security. So we're like, are they just trying to harvest payment data or get us to give them permissions to cross, market our data and whatnot. But, Australia just passed a law. I'd love to see something like this in the States. Right. I'm not optimistic, but.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. David says there's no moral compass with social media. That is probably true. And Chris says they don't want to. They need the audience. It costs them too much to self-regulate, meaning, kind of addressing what you brought up, Hans, here, where if they self-regulated, maybe it would have been better. But now government comes through and government's trying to regulate it, and that's a whole different story. Yeah. It's to me, that's very fascinating at the same time to see other countries in the world do this, right? In Israel, if you post, and Israel has a law where if I post something about you, Hans, and it's clearly malicious, it's libel, you can sue me in small claims for up to, I think, $300,000 or 300,000 shekels, which is about $90,000.
Wow.
And that's happened where people have, sued other people for clear libel on them online, taking a tweet or a Facebook message. In fact, the former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's son, Yair Netanyahu, has sued and been sued more times than any other person. He's involved in more libel suits than anyone else in Israel.
Wow.
For stuff that goes on Twitter.
Huh.
Between him and journalists and him and detractors of his father. So to me, seeing those laws in other countries and in the States, we don't see that as troublesome because we're behind the 8 ball on it.
Well, and I think that's part of, and if you ask educators and the school systems, part of the problem with all of these situations that are now coming to the school is laws and rules and things like that are all retroactive. We are trying to catch up with what has happened, with what is going on, because we never expected that this is where our media was going to take us. And so now the rules in an education setting is, how do you keep, we've given these kids these phones, how do you keep all of this from becoming an issue at school? And it is, and that's part of it is now the schools are involved and they have to make rules and regulations for sexting. They have to make them for cyberbullying. They have to make all of these other things because there were no constructs in place.
So when schools make these, rules and they put them together, how much of that is done in more of a expert approach? How much of it is done in a more common sense approach? And how are they ensuring, at least based on your experience, because I know you can't speak to the larger scale of thing, at least in the schools you've taught at or teach at, Angie, how have you seen, the students react to some of these rules? And has it really brought about student behavior change, or has it created a subculture of, snitches get stitches?
I think a little bit of both. I would say there's a little bit of both. And I think it also comes to how is it brought out to the students? A lot of times it's put into a handbook, the school handbook that you get at the beginning, and you say, okay, read this and sign off on it and say you agree with it. And I don't think that it really gets fully explained. Excuse me. And then I think that if you present it, if you explain it, if you talk about it, but then again, that comes to who has time for that a lot of times with our schools doing so many other things. So it really depends on the approach the school will take. If you go through it and you foster it and you explain to them, this is our belief on cyberbullying, this is our rule, this is exactly what it is, this is what we're saying, this is how it's going to be handled here at the school, and because we want to protect all of you, versus putting it in a handbook and we're going to deal with the case as it comes in, and the kids may not have any idea of the consequences. Yeah, the expectations or the consequences.
So that's that, so we talk about consequences a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about solutions as well.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, Angie, you did a survey, I think, a month or two ago with some of the kids.
Right. So I went back to a graduation of some of my kids just recently. And, these were kids that were in my class. And so I had them take a survey and just ask them questions of things that we had discussed, and kind of just getting some of the ideas now, because when I had them, they were 13, 14. Now they're getting to the 18 age and they're moving out, and just wondering, did any of this help? Were they aware of things that they shouldn't have? What are they still experiencing? So most of it, just finding the majority of their parents throughout their high school career did not check a lot of their things. They were left to a lot of their devices, and at least 30% of them said even the parents, when they did check, they hid a lot of their content. So it's not that, it's not that hard for them to hide. You're looking at 60% of them spending more than 6 hours a day on their phone or on a device of some sort, or a screen of some sort, which is not surprising to me. It seems like it's a lot, but when you think about everything that they're probably doing on it, it's not, but it's a lot of exposure for them of all sorts of types of media. And then the biggest one was I asked them, what are the big problems that you see? because that's something that I don't, in my age group or in our young kids age group, because of our kids being younger, we can see the problems, but I want to know, what do you know? Because you are in that age group. You're there all the time. You see it, you hear it, your friends are here. Nudity, nude pictures, those are the big ones. And it's a lot of them receiving them from people they have no idea, people they don't know. They're coming into their direct messages. They're coming into their, on Snapchat, people are, add me, and then they get a pic. And so, that's one of their biggest things is how can we stop the unsolicited nudes? And then the other problem is they're being solicited for nudes and those things.
So let me ask you something, because I'm a technologist. So in my head, I'm already going to solutions, right? How often, and I don't know if your survey even answered this, but when you're 14 and you sign up for a Snapchat, Instagram, or Facebook account, if you put in your age, which predominantly puts you under the age of 18, right?
Yeah.
Can we all agree to that? Can we make that our baseline, that if a student reports his age and his age is under 18, then by all means, the social media platform needs to treat this person differently than someone who's at the age of 18. I say this because of one thing. If you try to upload a nude photo to LinkedIn, it will not let you upload the photo. Try it. Won't work.
It's not a technology issue. I mean, I can speak from the technology perspective. It's not a technology issue, James. Solutions could be put in place. It's just the willingness to enforce it, from identity to OCR.
But that's where I think we have a chance, right? So the chance is you've got to treat anyone under the age of 18 like a minor.
Yep.
So if you see a minor at a strip club, the cops are going to show up. The parents are going to get arrested. That's child abuse. Kid's going to go into foster care, right? And this is going to go to family court and get resolved. So why does that not same rule apply on social media to social media platforms? Because I think the next parent that gets a nude, that their kid gets a nude on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook, and the kid's clearly underage on the platform, should sue them for child abuse, for allowing child abuse to happen on the platform. Because at the end of the day, the technology exists. I can scan an image and I can tell what that image is, right? And if that image contains nudity and you're sending it to someone who's under the age of 18, you should automatically block it, and you should report it to the FBI.
Yes.
Yep.
Because that's child pornography. That's sexual assault on a minor.
And we know that big tech is a big partner on identifying or partnering with law enforcement to identify, the real risk danger.
Also the number one tool being used for human trafficking and sex trafficking of minors across the world.
Absolutely.
So they can partner all they want. They can put those commercials and say that they do it, but they only do it because they're getting subpoenaed to do it. Because if they really wanted to stop it, they could. They could identify human trafficking, because guess what? All human traffickers operate a specific way and use specific keywords and operate in specific geolocations. And all of those things are available there. I want to get to some comments, and then we're going to get to solutions. Okay? So let's get to some comments. Paul talks about we were talking about schools making kids sign stuff. He goes, it's kind of like an end user agreement. No one really reads it. Kim Hakim, the awesome Kim, talks about watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Yes, that's a great one. Paul, I love what the power couple is doing. Hashtag Team Vargas. That is our hashtag for today's episode, folks. Paul has made it happen. Kim says, now there's a platform called Yobo. It's horrible dating site for teens. Tons of predators on there. Wonderful.
Great.
That's all we needed. Nora talks about, well said, James. I agree with you 110%. Nora also talks about the mom here who can't get her kid. So the mom mentioned, the friends even said, who is your mom? Your mom's so dumb. She can't protect you by stopping us. The girl has lost so much weight. The situation is eating her up. The mom doesn't know what to do. One, therapy, have the mom take her to some therapist to help her overcome that. Number two, find support groups that help kids that go through bullying. I know that Angie, I think Hans even brought this up in our first conversation. There's a lot of support groups out there. And then number three, go to the police and file
definitely,
and file a harassment complaint and let the cops go knock on those people's doors.
Yeah, and one of the things we mentioned to the kids is if this is happening to you, you save everything. You don't delete the messages. You save it all. You print it. You document it. You take screenshots of everything because you want to have the evidence and the proof.
Yeah. Kim talks about having a 17-year-old. It's a nightmare, social media. It is. I have a 16-year-old. It's a nightmare situation. So it really is. It's very, very challenging. So let's talk a little bit about some of the solutions, right? How do we bring awareness to parents, to educators, to kids? How do we start to make a better digital citizenship?
Okay, well, we've been thinking this for a while, and even though we were more engaged while we were in Indiana and we moved to Ohio, we still think this is such a need. So from the students, to the educators, to the parents. So we are planning to continue building that digital citizenship curriculum, and we would like to share. We would like to maybe start doing some, go visiting our local schools and sharing this. This is a great platform to do it. Maybe by sharing this with others, we can start building momentum around it and spreading the word.
Yeah, and getting into the younger, the better. At this point now, they're looking at 3rd to 5th grade is the age of really making them aware of what it means to be a citizen. As a digital citizen, these are your rights. You have rights as a citizen of the United States. These are your rights as a person on the platforms out there. You have a right to privacy. You have a right to certain things. And then these are your responsibilities. Really teaching them and getting into them and then having it reinforced at home. So putting out parent sessions where they can come and we can present and then they can ask questions, because I think a lot of it is parents are busy. I know. And especially with the pandemic where everything went online, we've seen parents and teachers and everybody struggling with Zoom and now you've got kindergartners using this Chromebook or this laptop at home and they don't know all the proper etiquette. And so this is really bringing forth more the need of how do we reach these kids younger and present to them, because they are born into this and it's not going away. And now they need to be taught, just as they need to be taught how to be part of our world outside, to be a citizen here. They need to be taught how to be a citizen online.
So that's wonderful. I want to bring up 2 things though. And Kim says the police do nothing. Paul adds, this still goes back to adding cyber hygiene to STEM, get rid of robotics. I will say this. We are not able to influence federal policy quickly. Mm-hmm. But you know what got federal members of the House to pass and get a privacy bill on the floor very quickly? When states started passing it themselves and they were like, wait a minute, this is creating challenges within our own little stuff. And so with that being said, I think that's one very, very important is influence local politics. Go to your local city. It's easier to pass a city ordinance than it is to pass a federal bill in Congress. Have your city pass a cyberbullying law. Have your city or county pass a child safety law. And then do it at the state level. You can get stuff done at a state level quicker also that way, where you hold social media companies accountable. I mean, with all the social media censorship, I was hoping Florida would also take the lead and pass a social media safety law for kids. But, they're not really doing that either.
I guess our point would be get engaged at a local level, just like we did. And we see, we don't see the impact right away. But, as she went back to talk to her students, many of them say, thank you, because you give me at least some guidance. And then I I made mistakes, but I have at least an idea where the limit is. So just like us, we wanted to build this movement to start, build this kind of a movement of parents, maybe cybersecurity professionals like me, and as parents as well, to get involved locally, and your local community with your own kids, with the kids that come to play in your house, and your school corporation, running for board member or something. This is important. It has to come to. We need to realize that this is affecting our kids' lives, and it should be an important. And it's bipartisan. So not getting into politics here, I think everybody can agree that this is important, and we should do more awareness about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense of stuff that goes on online that's very, very challenging, and I think once we see that, we have to address it. And local's the way to go about it right now. Is get involved in your school boards, get involved in your local, jurisdictional county government, city government, and yeah, you're right. It is bipartisan. Should be bipartisan. I mean, it should be. And I say should because some stuff, unfortunately, has ends up being that if one person says it, then it goes down the route of it's just someone else. But we ought to start addressing the inherent damage this is going to do to our kids, because the desire for instant gratification of posting a picture and getting likes. And Social Dilemma highlights that very, very good. If you've seen the documentary on Netflix, you should go. You know that they in a psychological study, you getting a like is an endorphin like getting high. It's the same endorphin. And Kim here says, please reach out to me for any support. I'm so passionate about this topic. Kim has an awesome radio show called Cyber for All. I'm going to recommend you guys as a guest for Kim to talk about this because she's also got an awesome audience on her radio show. But yeah, we need to talk more about this, and you guys are doing an unbelievable service. So thank you.
Another thing I wanted to mention is that there is something that we think there is a need for it, but it's also children literature about cyber, and this is something that we're working on a project to bring some of that forward. So more to come, perhaps in the future.
You mean children literature like books?
Yep.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, we need more of that. We absolutely need more. Folks, thank you, Hans, Angie, for so much for coming on today's show. Everyone who tuned in live, thank you so much. This is a wrap for us, but Hans, Angie, how can people follow you and get in touch with you?
Well, my social media is LinkedIn, so that's the best way to get in contact with me. And you also have that.
I have LinkedIn and I have Facebook too, and we're working on putting together a website. So
yes,
we're getting there.
When you get the website, let me know. We'll post it on all of our social media as well, and send people there. So there's that. There's what is this? Chris here is misform malware. Yeah. So go check it out. Thank you for your time from David. Great children's book for information security. So that's what this is. Misform malware, apparently. I guess it's misform malware, but with one M. So they're not teaching the kids to spell very well. I just want to say. One letter doesn't carry through to two words. Right, Angie?
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right. In the English language.
In the English language. That
was 1 hour conversation about that.
Yeah. Folks, that's it for us here. We'll be back later today, a Tech Corner dropping with Joe Salazar from Tifa Networks. You guys can check that out on the Cyber Hub podcast. Monday, I'll be back live right here at 9 a.m. with the practitioner brief. Until then, thank you to Hans and Angie. Go follow them. Go check out the work they're doing. Reach out. Give them some support because they're needed. This is a life's mission, and we should support it all we can because, well, guess what? That's where people are targeting our kids. So let's bravo, chapeau. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
All right, folks, that's it for us here. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Shabbat Shalom. See you later. Cheers.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.